1 year ago, on my 1 year anniversary of leaving Berlin and my life in Germany behind and moving to Barcelona, I wrote myself a letter. Today, I don't really remember anymore what I wrote in it, but at the end of this video, I'm going to open it for the first time. Es ist so warm. Jegi, komm Hallo sagen. Komm Hallo sagen. Hello, if you are new here, my name is Maxi. This is Diego. Let me get him for you. Oops. He's not really in the mood to be... What? He's not really in the mood to be on my lap because it's a very, very hot day here in Barcelona. And I'm gonna put you down again because I'm also getting really hot. But if you're new here, I'm a German guy living in Spain, and I make videos about how I try to make my life a little bit more enjoyable. Not that it's not enjoyable, but I'm documenting my journey of making it more enjoyable. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about my 2-year anniversary that's coming up. It is June. It's still June. Okay, but it's almost July. On the 10th of July is my 2-year anniversary of moving here. I feel like it's been 2 really clear episodes of the first year and the second year. After the first year, so on July 10th, 2025, maybe a couple days later because I was a bit late, I wrote myself a letter to reflect on the year that had passed and also to ask myself some questions about the upcoming year, the year that has just passed now. I don't really remember anymore what I said in this letter, so I'm really curious. I'm also a little bit nervous because I know that I put my most personal thoughts in there about the different aspects of my life that are basically all completely new because I moved to a different country, so I had to rebuild everything. But before I open this letter, I want to talk to you a little bit about the differences that I've been noticing in these 2 years between my life before in Germany/Berlin and my life here in Barcelona. The first thing I want to talk about is kind of my expectations of Barcelona and then what I found. I think my expectations of Barcelona were way crazier. You have to understand from a German perspective, it's a really, really popular vacation destination. And a lot of people come to Barcelona especially in the summer months, July, August. It has a lot to do with like beach, like summer vacation, but also a lot of partying. I was expecting not only the city itself, but like the vibe of the people here to be way crazier. But what I found or what I've built for myself here is actually so much more quiet. It's very chill. I don't know if you've ever been to Barcelona, but you do have the amounts of tourists that are insane. You do have the pickpockets, which also the center of Barcelona is very known for. The beaches, you have that summer vibe, you have that tourist vibe, you have the clubs, you have the parties, depending on the area that you're in. Also a lot of traffic. I think why it turned out so much more chill for me is because of the life that I have created here. So to give you a little bit of a comparison, I used to live on a very crazy street. It was a very narrow street, but it was like a main connecting street of some of the Bezirke. I don't know how all of these things came together, but there's also a main connecting road for either the firefighters or ambulances, but sirens all day. And as if that wasn't enough, there was also one of the most known clubs of Berlin right next to it, Kit Kat Club. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but if you have, or if you haven't, it is probably like the second most known club of Berlin after Berghain. It's open many days of the week. It usually closes at like 5 p.m., 6 p.m. the day after. So the day after you'll have people leaving from this club all day. You can imagine what kind of state these people are in when they leave the club. So basically, whenever I left my house, it would be traffic, drunk people, a broken glass everywhere. It was a very intense street, which, by the way, is also the street that I raised Diego on, because I lived there almost all the time that I lived in Berlin. Also, when he was a baby and I had to go out like every 2 hours with him, it was kind of crazy. Then the comparison to here, I live kind of on the outskirts. Is that what you call it? I don't know if that's what you call it. Maybe that's actually outskirts, might be like the outside of the city. No, but it's inside the city. This area that I live in here is so chill. There's a lot of older people. It's very, very residential. Basically, no one speaks English here, let alone German. But I really, really love this about this neighborhood. It feels very local. Then also a good thing about being a little bit outside of the city center, Barcelona doesn't really have as many parks. On the outside though, you will find like greener spots, which is great if you have a dog like me. So basically my day-to-day life, also working from home and not necessarily having to go to the city center, it's pretty chill. It's very quiet, it's very calm. It's not like I live in the middle of nowhere, but it's definitely not meeting those expectations that I had of what Barcelona is like. And expectations doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I wanted. It's just what I expected. Actually, I wanted this. I wanted exactly this. I wanted to be a little bit more outside. I wanted it to be calm. Probably because of the circumstances that I had in my Berlin street. Oops. Oh my God. Okay. Quick iced coffee break because I'm sweating. Now I want to get a little bit into what do I miss from Berlin? And the answer is actually barely anything. But I surprisingly don't miss my home. That was a huge part of my life in Berlin that I actually really, really loved. I don't really miss my day-to-day life. I don't miss like the vibe of the city. And then also, like, obviously I don't miss the obvious negative parts about Berlin, like the gray weather, the club culture that I was never like really identifying with. It's very like random, detailed things that I do miss kind of, but not to a point where I'd be like, oh, I'm so sad because I missed this. No, it's just something that I remember and I'm like, oh, that was kind of cool. One thing that randomly comes to my mind is that I would always really, really love the beginning of the fall season. So basically like late September, also October until Halloween maybe. Like pumpkin season. I love pumpkin. I used to bake so many things with pumpkin and cook with pumpkin and make my own pumpkin spice mix and stuff like that. I still do that, but it's different here. So you don't really have that super fall-y vibe. And by the time it's Halloween, it's still very much like, it feels like late summer. So that's something I kind of miss. Also, what I just mentioned in the point before is there are not as many green spaces here in Barcelona. Now living here, I'm only just realizing this because when I used to live in Berlin, I didn't really know that was something special about the city, that literally everywhere you go, you turn and there's some kind of park, whether that's a huge park or a small park, but you have like green spaces, which is fantastic for when you have a dog, when you want to do like outdoor activities, when you want to have a picnic or like whatever. But here, sometimes I feel like depending on where you are, you really have to specifically look for a park. And also something that I noticed that I think is kind of funny is that Spanish people sometimes call something a park that I would never in my life consider a park. Something that's like completely concrete, 2 patches of green and like a little dog area where dogs can pee and poop. Where is the park? Because I don't see a park. But at the end of the day, I am 100% not complaining. Here, at least you have like sunny weather most of the year. Even going into the deepest of winter, you do still have quite a lot of sun. So I am not complaining about that. I can see that people here spend a lot of time outside. And in Berlin, you don't really have so many opportunities throughout the year to properly enjoy like a sunny day in a park. You have a lot of parks, but then I personally found that there wasn't so much time to actually enjoy these parks. This next topic I called My Neighbors Know My Name Now, because yeah, that's like what it is. My neighbors know my name now. So to give you a little bit of a picture from before, I lived in an apartment building. Unfortunately, I only knew a couple of my neighbors. I knew the neighbors from across the hall. They were super nice, but other than that, I didn't really personally know anyone else. But now my neighbors know my name. I also have a really fantastic older couple that lives like next door. They're the sweetest people. They watch Diego for me when I go on vacation, when I have to travel for work. Sometimes also when I just like spend a day at the beach or something and it's too hot for Diego. So they just watch him for the day. They're super sweet. They're in love with him. Just my neighborhood overall. I know my vet that's right around the corner here. I know my pharmacists. I know the people that work in the supermarkets that are right around here. So it feels just way more personal. It gives me like a homey vibe, even though all of that, what I just described, is outside of my home, technically outside of my apartment. But I think it's like a really warm thing to know your neighbors and to talk to them on the street, and also to talk to the other dog owners. Every morning, for example, I meet this one girl and she's always with her dog, and we always have a little chat, and I feel like that's my small, like, community is a big word, but my neighbor community. So I think that's something really cute. I am German, but fun fact, my grandma is Spanish. She is from Galicia. She's from a small town there originally, but she's been living in Germany for about 60 years, I think, 65 maybe. She's probably more German at this point than she's Spanish, but still, it is something that's connected to my heritage. Because of that, I think I always had some kind of interest in Spanish. I'm very interested in languages anyway. I think it's something incredible. It's super interesting and so powerful, but it's a topic for a different video. So I was always really interested in Spanish because of my connection to it. And when I finally decided to leave Berlin behind, I obviously had to think about my options. Where do I want to go? I was also thinking about Lisbon because I had just been in Lisbon when I started thinking about this. But one of the deciding factors for me in the end was actually the language, which now I know that a lot of people speak Catalan here, but basically everyone speaks Castellano even if they speak Catalan. I decided to come here to also connect with that part of my heritage a little bit more, to become fluent in Spanish, because that was my dream. I speak German and English already fluently, and then I was like, how cool would it be if I could speak my grandma's language fluently at some point and live my life in that language? I don't know. I thought that was like the coolest idea. To be completely honest, in the very beginning, I already spoke some Spanish, and at the time I thought it was okay, my Spanish, but actually now looking back, I didn't really know Spanish. I knew like a little bit from like 2 classes here and there in college, but I didn't fully understand what people were saying to me, and it was hard. It was hard in the beginning. Naturally, when you move to another country where they speak another language, it comes with a lot of effort because you have to go through a lot of organizational things that will be in that other language. So it wasn't always easy. It was a lot of effort that I put into it. I also didn't always have help. The way that things work here, I had to figure that out myself. So it was quite hard at some times. Reflecting back on how it was in the beginning, wow, it's such an incredible difference, and I'm so proud of myself because I put a lot of active effort into it as well, like studying vocabulary, trying to figure out language stuff that I don't understand yet, and making sure that I get how people actually talk and not just like a textbook and stuff like that. And now I naturally order at the bar, at the restaurant, I do my administrative stuff, I signed a lease, I go to the vet, I bought a scooter, like I did all these things that in that moment I didn't think about it, but now looking back, I'm like, wow, I can be proud of myself for doing that in a completely different language, that I've been more or less only actively learning for the past almost 2 years. So that's something I'm really, really proud of. It's still not always easy, and I still definitely don't always understand everything. And I definitely wouldn't say that I speak Spanish fluently now, even though I'm also not sure about the concept of fluency. Like, when exactly do you say that you speak a language fluently? I don't know. Maybe there's a definition for it. Let me know if you know. But even though it's hard still at times, I try, and up until this point, I've always figured out successfully how to manage everything in Spanish. And on top of all that, I think what impresses me about myself is that I am now in a relationship in which we don't speak any other language but Spanish. We only speak Spanish. And that's something that a year ago, for example, I could not imagine. But now today, that is my reality. And I guess you could say that means that I'm fluent, maybe, possibly. I think the moment when I really realized that I had changed a lot over the past 2 years. Also, a lot of things around me in my life have changed. What I was just talking about, all these things, was when I was writing this letter. I don't really remember exactly what I wrote in this letter, so I'm super curious about my thoughts from a year ago. But I do remember what it felt like. I felt like, wow, okay, there's so many things and changes and topics that I can talk about now to myself. If I really compare this to the day that I left, to that moment when I was writing the letter, so many things had changed. And to me, that was incredible. It was incredible seeing that personal growth and feeling it when I was putting it on paper more than you would feel it like when something gradually changes over a year. But when you actually think about it in that moment and you have to write it down, that's when you really realize how much you've grown. So all of that being said, I think now I want to open this letter with you. It is not the 10th of July yet, like I said in the beginning of the video, but I will record again once that day has come, and I will open the letter together with you. Dear 2026 Maxi, Diego is doing great. He went through his second surgery, but after recovering, he's never been better. By the time you're reading this, he will be about to turn 6 years old. Crazy. How's his Spanish doing? What are the moments I feel most alive and fulfilled? When I walk through the city and remember that I live where I used to go on vacation. What gives me a feeling of home? My apartment, Diego, homemade food, and Disney Plus. What do I wish for my future self? I wish you more chances to understand yourself better and to find clarity on who you want to be. I hope you're finding it out along the way, but sometimes you have to go through hard times to find out, and that's okay too. One last thought I want to leave my future self with. Don't be so hard on yourself. Have the same compassion for yourself that you'd have for your best friends.